Thank you all so much for coming out today. We are going to get started, and I just want to remind you, if you're here for our forum, please sign in over here so that way your attendance is recorded. There are also passports being handed out, and I think there will be some left over there. If you come in late and didn't get a passport yet, if you want to do the art walk and get everything signed to turn in for our forum point. Remember, this is the last lecture in our art forum lecture series for the semester. And then if you are enrolled in Art Forum and you don't see your name on the list, just please write your name and sign so that way you still get your attendance. And then if there are any questions, please wait until at the end of the lecture and there will be time to ask them. And before we get started, are there any art program related announcements?
Hi, I'm Claire, the president of the Glass Guild, and tonight, as part of the Emporia First Friday Art Walk, we are having live glass demonstrations and our glass pumpkin patch, where you can come and buy your very own glass pumpkin made by students here on campus. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so support the Glass Guild. They made some amazing pieces. And then please remember to put your phones on silent. All right, and what? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we have another art department announcement. So if you're aware, the beginning of every month we go on a little gallery gaggle where we walk around and we look at the new art installations. We normally do that on Tuesdays. This coming Tuesday is November 5th. Wow, election day. So we're gonna gaggle out to vote. So if you need a ride to vote or anything, we'll be meeting in King Hall and we can drive you there, and we're gonna walk around and look at art and talk about it at talks, just how we normally do. So yeah, come gaggle with us and look at art.
Are there any other announcements? Okay, cool. All right. So today we have our special guest is Sam Gleue. Gleue, I'm so sorry. Sam is an alumni of Emporia State University and currently the hand engraver for Smith Wesson. He is from Chapman, Kansas, and the engraving jewelry profession has taken him across the country to Springfield, Massachusetts. He began in 2016 after graduating ESU and receiving his bench jeweler certification from NASJ, working in jewelry stores such as Jared's, Shane Company, and Rocky Mountain Gold Works. Now, he utilizes the skills and techniques learned from Emporia State to create compositions of American-style scrollwork on firearms for Smith & Wesson, bringing artistry to arms. Please welcome Sam.
Thank you, guys, and thank you, Haley. Thanks for coming out, and thank you to the art committee and everybody for putting this together. I really appreciate it.
Sam, can't hear you.
Hello? Can everybody hear me?
You might have to detach it.
Detach it?
Like you can take the microphone out of the sleeve if you want to hold it.
Okay. How about now? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Starting off strong. Did want to thank everybody in the art committee for putting this together. Really appreciate that, and I'm appreciate being here. Super happy to be here. I am Sam Gleue, and I am from Chapman, but I did grow up all over Kansas. Started in Wakefield, and this here is my Nana and Grandpa's house out in Wakefield. This is where I spent a lot of my time. I grew up on a farm, and there are a lot of farming things that I did growing up. I helped harvest grain, fed cattle, and did a lot of my work here in the summers. And when we were done working, we would watch a lot of Westerns, and my grandfather has this huge collection of firearms, and they a lot of them are shotguns, and they have engravings on the side of the receivers, such as like hunting dogs or like ducks, pheasants, things that you would hunt with those things. So I think that had a lot of influence on where I ended up today. And I moved from Wakefield to Manhattan, and I lived there for a brief period, moved out to Salina, and went out to Abilene, back to Manhattan, and then back to Wakefield. And I went to school, and let's see, so like while we were out there, this is my grandfather here holding the revolver, and he was a huge supporter of my artwork. There was never a question about it, which was nice. The support system was awesome. Doing a lot of hunting and fishing, and then this is a combine. That one I drove for harvest. And in high school, I played football, and I bet you can't guess which one was me. And I was, always very large, so playing football just kind of came naturally. And I remember graduating high school, and then we were sending out, videos for like highlight reels and stuff. And my cousin actually went to Emporia, so that was one of the places that we sent those videos out to. Got a call back, and then I was, recruited to Emporia through football. And some of my, early artwork. So while I was in high school, a few things, like I was very much into horror, line work, black and white stuff. And there wasn't ever any like rhyme or reason to why I drew. I just saw something and I was like, or I had a thought and I was like, man, that'd be cool or frightening. Draw that. And just experimented with a lot of graphite, pen and ink, stippling, cross-hatching, that kind of thing. That was like my style, I guess, growing up. I also was really into American comic books. And I really liked all the bold lines and bright colors, and just the idea of the superhero or villain was fun to me, and I kind of ran with that. Being recruited to Emporia for football, I was able to come here, and this was the engraving class while I was here. Has a lot of fond memories of the engraving classroom. Like when I first got here, we were in what we called the dungeon downstairs. There was one microscope, James had it, and everybody else had a loop or some form of optivisor, and we were all doing like push engraving work, which was great because the push work really helps your muscle memory and like feeling the graver going through the metal, and translates a lot better to the power and the GRS equipment that we have now. So it was just the I guess proof I was on the football team for a semester and a half, and keep clicking. And so my first couple of years while I was here, I was playing football and doing my prerequisites. And while I was doing after my prerequisites, my advisor at the time told me that I should try James's engraving class as my next advanced course. And I remember when I did, I fell in love with it, and that was pretty much the end. I declared my major after that first class. But when I did that, the classes ran late, and they cut into like practice, so my coaches said that I wasn't able to continue, or like I wasn't able to take those classes just due to the time. So I kind of had to make a decision on whether I wanted to continue to play sports or go into engraving full time. And I feel like I made the correct decision, but sometimes that will come up, making those tough decisions for like career moving forward and things. I was also a part of Phi Delta Theta, and I keep clicking the button. And I made a lot of good, long-lasting connections through the fraternity. And like this is me and Miguel Alaniz, another very talented art major, ceramicist and glassblower. The connections made through the fraternity I feel like is very important, and the support system that you have while at school through Greek life and stuff helped me a lot while I was in school. And some of my prerequisite work, and like the bus from the sculpture class with Roberta, and just some drawings that I had done, still sticking with like kind of a horror theme. You find a lot of skulls in my early work, no particular reason, just because I thought it was cool. And then you have some of the best painting that I ever did, because Derek Wilkinson is an amazing professor. And a little bit of graphic design with Gingy, because I'm also a ginger. And I picked that shell picture for a reason, because it was in this advanced drawing class that I was in it with Dan Kirkhafer, and like an important thing that he had told me, because I worked on this shell for like a week, and I erased it 10, 20 times because I couldn't make it look exactly like the shell for whatever reason. And he noticed that I was really frustrated, and he came over and he took the shell out of my hand and he said, "What does that look like?" And I said, "A shell." And he was like, "Great." And he put it back in my hand. And it just helped me move forward off that, because it doesn't have to be necessarily perfect in order for it to, like achieve what you're trying to do. And down in the bottom right it was the final project in my engraving class, and each flower a student in the engraving class did, and then we made prints, cut them out, and made a collage. And I just have very fond memories of that project. I like that a lot. Let's see. And James was like taught me so much about engraving, of course, and he was a big part of why I declared my major. He taught, gave me my basics, learned scrollwork, lettering, inlay, rendering an image through Bolino, a bit of banknote style work, and I learned everything about engraving through James. I mean, at this point, it was a big part of that. And some of my first engravings were here. I think this was one of our first projects. We learned to draw the banknote or cross hatching on a drawing of a skull, and then when engraved it. It's just some of the early examples. Here's some other ones. This skull scroll in the bottom right was, I think, one of the first engravings that I ever did. You can tell my spines are a little all over the place, and shading's kind of muddied up, but I was super proud of it at the time. And let's see. Here's some of the more advanced work from class. And this was a lino cut project where we had a major print that we printed multiple times, cut up, and then created a mask out of all of them, or the different pieces of the one main print. And then the one on the far left is, it was the 7 sins on the 7 C's, and this one was gluttony. And I depicted him on the Queen Anne's Revenge. And when I remember presenting that one to James, and he just said that I was a glutton for punishment because of how much detail and things were going into it. Here are some other examples of the advanced classes. That little black box was entered into the jury show, and you have different examples of English scrollwork and more skulls. Let's see. And, oh, sorry. Yep, sorry. What's happening? Okay. And here, there's an example of inlay, copper inlay onto a pendant and this bar. And while I was here at school, I had to think about what I was going to do with engraving, right? And I figured that there were a couple of different avenues that I could take. Ideally, firearms was what I had envisioned as the end goal. But the job opportunities are kind of slim, and they're all also a lot on the East Coast or over in Europe. So I figured jewelry would be the, safest and more secure route coming out of school. So I went home after graduating, and our family knew a jeweler in town in Clay Center, and I went and apprenticed under that jeweler for a summer, and he felt that I had taken to jewelry well enough to let me know that if I was serious about it, that I should go to New Approach School for Jewelers in Tennessee, taught by Blaine Lewis. So after graduation, I went to Tennessee pretty much the next available class. It's a 12-week bench program, and they teach you all the basics of jewelry, or they teach you enough to where if you were to go to any jewelry store, you'd be able to survive and start to really begin a career as a jeweler. And while I was there during these 12 weeks, we learned a lot of different stone setting techniques. You have channel setting in a couple of different ways. There's bezel sets, and you're also learning how to set princess cuts and pear-shaped, any form of setting you will learn there. They also taught ring sizing, They taught chain repair and, you know, all of everything that you would need to know. And then also while I was there, they have, for the 12-week program specifically, they have a week with Jason Marchiafava, and he teaches a week of ornamental, like hand push techniques that you would use on jewelry. And then some of the examples of that are, this is let's see, the ring down here with Mo Betta. That was kind of the motto of that class. And this is a channel set of princess cuts, which can be very difficult when pushing the metal over the stones. It's very easy to chip those corners. Like diamonds are very hard, but the points, corners, the tension is easy to snap. But he teaches everything in a way that's very hard to mess up. And here are some examples of the techniques learned by Jason. And he taught this flower here in the middle with almost looks a bit like a fairy with the leaves coming off his wings. It's like a cousin to a Hawaiian flower. And then the top right on that same plate is a running olive leaf pattern that I use quite a bit in my work to this day. And you have these running wheat borders that border very well. And I think this was well worth the time, and learned a lot, made a lot of good connections with a lot of friends through this program. And then this was our final project where we made this 14 karat gold ring shank with a platinum Tiffany triple mounting. And that's all fabricated from platinum wire. And then I did the running wheat pattern engraved on the face of that shank. And then on the left of me is Blaine Lewis, and on the right is Drew Hadley. And that was the day that we got our certificate. And from there, I went straight into jewelry. My first store that I went to was a family-owned store. It's called Marodi's Jewelers. And I think it went well. But from everything that I learned at New Approach, it was like I had my playbook, and they had their playbook by the way that they like to do things. And it just didn't mesh very well. And I was able to engrave at Marodi's, which was nice. I engraved some of the pieces for the store. It wasn't for the showcase, but more for like clients calling in and asking for it. And it didn't work out for one reason or another, but from there I had called Blaine, and I had kind of explained what was going on and just a couple of things that we had disagreed with. And he got me a place at Shane & Company over in Kansas City in Overland Park. And at Shane & Company, I really enjoyed my time there, but the issue with Shane & Company, at least for me, was that I wasn't able to engrave on anything. But I was learning a lot about being a bench jeweler, and I learned a lot of different techniques, time management, when to just like let go of something. If you're just so focused on making something perfect, it's like, this is good, everything looks great, just move on to the next thing. But from Shane Co., a fellow student from New Approach, he had called me and said that there was a opening at his family's jewelry store in Texas, and I would be able to engrave at their jewelry store and continue that part of my career. So I said my goodbyes at Chain Company and drove right out to Texas. I was in Wichita Falls, Texas for about 2 years, and there at NACLS I did some more advanced engraving stuff that I'd been prior the last couple of years, like at Marodi's and Chain & Company, like finishing this watch, doing the nice relief scrolls on the side of the case, or the repeating flower pattern around the other one. These watches, we had this line of watches called Reactor, and we were the only store that offered these. I still wear mine to this day. It was a super durable watch. The steel on the side was really hard. It was very difficult to work with, but it cut very clean. And here, I feel like things were going well. I was doing a lot of jewelry work, not so much engraving, and they would still try to have me do engraving projects, or the jewelry consultants would talk with clients and try to drum up business that way. But it was all a common question, or something that I noticed, was that throughout these jewelry stores, they weren't really sure what to do with the engraving service. There was a high interest that people had asked for it, but as far as, say, pricing or what they could offer, there isn't really a blue book on that. So that's something that I've been trying to figure out as I move through my career, so can better have that presented the next time those questions come up. At NACLS, I feel like there was a point where I kind of plateaued, and I didn't feel like I was learning anymore. I was just kind of going in, doing the same thing, and then that was about it. And I wanted to do more custom pieces and fabrication. I started looking, and that's when I found Rocky Mountain Gold Works. And this store was great. Tom Lindenberger, they're the other tall guy, just less hair. He's a very accomplished jeweler, and while looking over the store and the accolades that he had acquired, the publishings that he was in, and looking at some of the jewelry that he was putting out, I contacted him, and it turns out actually that he worked with a jeweler that I originally apprenticed with in Kansas before I started my jewelry career. So it was all kind of felt like it was a full circle moment. And he saw my engraving work and some of my early jewelry stuff, and liked it to the point where he called me out for an interview. And when you interview at a jewelry store, it's actually a bench test, and depending on the level of jeweler that you're going, that you're presenting yourself as, is the kind of test that they're going to put in front of you. So we fabricated a silver ring, set one stone into that, and I did a little bit of engraving while I was there too. I believe I fixed a chain and I think that was it. But talked a lot of shop, and he was happy with my performance and asked me to move out and start work there. And I think I learned, like, Rocky Mountain Goldworks was a fantastic experience for me. This is one of those examples of like the platinum ring transformation. This was when it first came in, and they wanted, I think that, I mean, they did want to rework, but I did fix this like some gold piece in here that they used gold solder on platinum, which is a problem because then you contaminate the platinum and it can't be marked as 955 anymore. So we had to clean all that out. The stones that were set on the shoulders of the ring were a little wonky, and half the stones were kind of cracked. That center stone was very sideways, and we were able to turn that around and, breathe life back into some of those, to the engraving, and I reset the stones, got a new head and engraved that, and this was all, with the things that I learned from New Approach here, and with like Tom, and just a culmination of everything. I felt like this was that piece that kind of showed where I was at that point. And I think, I was feeling good at Goldworks, but I'm also a part of, there's a lot of engraving forums, or like online communities of engravers. And one of those is Sam Alfano's Tips and Tricks. And one day while I was scrolling through that, an application popped up for Smith Wesson. And I saw it, and I didn't even read the job description. I just sent like my interest in the job to the recruiter, and like a short portfolio that I had on my phone. And I figured, why not? Because this was the goal, to be, engraving firearms, or this is the thought that I had. And they got back to me fairly quickly, and they flew me out for an interview, and I spoke with my predecessor like all day, just nerding out about engraving, and I cut like a couple of scrolls for him, just an example to show that I, could engrave. And I feel like the interview and everything went well. Came back, waited maybe a week, and then they said that they would like to have me on at Smith Wesson, and there was a very sad goodbye at Goldworks when I left, but like Tom understood and sent me off, with like with the good luck, and that he was happy for me and stuff, and all, like, that was all very good. And now at Smith Wesson, I learned, like, I had a 9-month like master apprentice sort of relationship with Dave Mishashek. And he was the engraver for Smith Wesson. Like, he started at Smith Wesson when he was 19 years old, and he retired when he was about 65, 66. And he was very much a hammer and chisel guy, and he did fantastic work. He taught me a lot about like forming compositions on revolvers, and how the scrolls should or in his, like, how the scrolls should grow or form across the gun, should accentuate like the form of the revolver, start large and go small for as far as like the size of your scrolls, right? And also his leaf work, he was a big proponent of like start with your big leaf and then as it comes around they get smaller. It's like he taught me some more specifics, or at least like what he had learned from the like engravers at Smith Wesson. And through the 9 months with him, and then also being able to engrave 8 hours a day, every day, I think really started to hone in on like my line consistency, shading. Everything just started to get a little bit better. And I also, while I was there, I started researching the history of Smith & Wesson, and that led me into doing the American style of scrollwork, because it ties directly to the company I found in my research in a pretty significant way. Our first engraver was Gustav Young, and he, along with others like Louis D. Nimschke, when they immigrated to the United States from Germany, they brought with them this like a little more simplified Germanic style, but it was it still looked very good, and there was a lot of unique elements in the scrolls and it also didn't, like, there's some scroll work that takes a lot more time than others. This one could fill a very large space, but still look classy, add like a visual appeal to the gun more so than just the gun itself. And this one is one of the guns that I worked on, and it's in that American style scroll work. Just showing some of the zigzag pattern going underneath the cylinder and then around the flutes of the cylinder, kind of tying those areas into each other, and how it just kind of flows out from the base or the side plate out to the barrel of the gun. The American style, with like how popular it was and how it was such a big part of like the golden age of firearm engraving, and a large part of it was coming out of Smith & Wesson, or it was being viewed on Smith & Wesson firearms. And that's why I've decided to like gravitate more towards this style, and I've been using this for the past 2.5 years, like learning how to engrave with that. And let's see. This is a little more simplified, as it was like a distributor pattern, or a more like not assembly line, but it was a series. There were multiple of these guns who were doing this pattern several times, whereas the mountain gun was more of a one-off for like one client. So this one got a little more attention and detail, and it's also a little more expensive. And one thing, or a couple of things that I've learned, like while being at Smith, is keeping track of your time and being able to answer the question of like, how long is it going to take and how much is it going to cost are very common. And one way to answer that, although there really isn't a blue book, but in the FEGA how-to book on their website, they at the very least have this patterns in time per square inch. And this is what I've been using to better answer that question than I have in the past. It's kind of given me more of an outline, something that I can fall back on, or like base my pricing off of for designs. And doing it this way can be very dangerous, especially if you're not familiar with the style that you're working with. You want to be able to know that you can hit that number with the style that you're working with, because sometimes if you're working with like an unfamiliar style, the designing and like having to constantly think about like where the shading is actually going, or the like how the leaf forms interact with each other, folds, compositionally how it's going to be put together is all going to take more time, and then all of that is going to be skewed, and you'll potentially end up taking more time for a quote than originally anticipated. And these here are some of the timetables that I did, breaking down how long the drawing itself was, the engraving of the contour lines, the flare cuts that were put in the background, breaking down all that to see where the time is going, and then a 1x1 square inch area to help map out or create a formula for that question. And I think I'm coming up to time, so I guess that's really all I have at the moment. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
So I have a question about how you go about actually engraving on your pieces. Do you map stuff out before? Do you go in with a plan, okay, this is how I want this to look, sketch it out before, or do you just go in and create the idea?
That's a good question. Depending on the project, if somebody comes to me with a specific idea, like if they have, say, a monogram, or maybe they want their pet or a name or something, then I'll make a drawing or a sketch and present that first, just to make sure that that's, all understood. But if I'm being asked to do something like an American style we have a class system at Smith Wesson that basically just describes coverage. So class C, B, A, 25%, 50%. If it's one of those, then I can go in and just map something out and kind of let that happen, just because I've been working with it so much, and over time it kind of comes naturally. So depending on what it is, yeah. Yes.
So when you're working on the guns, especially larger projects like that, are you working solo or are you working with a team to do
At Smith Wesson,
Yes.
It's just me.
Okay.
So I'll do the drawings and the engravings, trying to come up with what I think is going to be the best for that situation. The team will do really well. Yes.
So I actually have two questions. One is a follow-up to that. Does that mean if we see anything coming coming out of Smith Wesson currently that's being engraved? Like that's you?
Probably, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes they reach back into the archives of other engraved guns, like on social media or something. Some of those could be Dave. They could also be, I think there's a pretty good collection of like Paul Paquette stuff. But moving forward, hopefully it'll mostly be me. Yeah.
And my other question was, when you had jobs that were more like jewelry focused, like stone setting and stuff like that, where you couldn't engrave as much at work, were you still able to do it in your like downtime?
I'm sorry, one more time?
Were you still able to engrave like in your personal time even when you had jobs that weren't providing you with that?
Yeah. As far as like a non-compete goes or something, like working with a company,
I
or
was
just
thinking, like practicing and working with stuff.
at home?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a setup at my apartment, so like with the microscope and ball lights and stuff. So I will do some work at home. Since getting the job here, it's a little bit difficult for going 8 hours in the factory and then coming back and looking at the desk. I just can't do it today. So that's a little more limited now. But yes, I do. Yes.
I think you told me that when you started at Smith & Wesson, there was a big learning curve on hardened steel versus silver and jewelry metals.
Oh yeah.
And what kind of time did it take you to gain proficiencies with the hardened steel?
So working with, working with jewelry, the gold, silvers, platinums, they're all very soft, super easy to work with. Sometimes they're too soft, so the graver can like fall through it, but developing the finesse and like really light touch with that did cause some issues going into the very hard stainless steel that is Smith & Wesson guns, especially like higher caliber guns like the 44 Magnum or the 500. Those barrels and cylinders are all very dense, and only a handful of gravers are really going to be effective cutting into those. So there was definitely a learning curve with that, and there are even little tricks of like increasing the face geometry of your graver from 45 degrees to 50 degrees to give it a little more meat, using a 120 so you have it's more substantial at the tip, and then also blunting the tip of the graver. Just all of these things just to make your lines consistent and not chip and break. So I couldn't give you an exact timestamp on how long that curve took me to figure out, but there was a noticeable difference from the two, and figuring that out would be important. Yes.
So from all of your past jobs, it's kind of that basic rule to design around enclaved areas or like dented areas. Has there ever been projects where you've been forced to do that? Forced to engrave those?
Yes. My least favorite place on a revolver that I'm able to reach is right in front of the trigger guard. So this right here. Do not like this place. This is a bad place to be. But I mean, you can do it and it still looks nice, like when you're showing it. But this getting in the way of your angles, you can only spin or move your vise so much, and you'll end up running into this. And then up here, you'll end up running into the barrel, especially if the barrel can't be removed from the frame of the sign. Another place that's very difficult. It has a nickname I can't say, mixed company, but it's right here in between the lug and the barrel. As you're going from this convex shape, coming down into a valley, back into another convex shape. So you run into that like The angle being to the point where when you're trying to turn, you'll get heel drag up on the top of the barrel, like at the crest of that, right? And then coming down, you have an immediate shift this way, so maintaining your angle so your line is consistent. Coming down, you'll end up hitting the heel on the top, but you'll also dig if you're not like following the curve just right. So try to avoid that as well. Yes?
This might be a stupid question, but you talked a lot about, being on the football team and teamwork, and you mentioned you're the only engraver at Wesson. I don't know, this job seems kind of isolating, and I wonder why you chose this over something that's more communally based like printmaking.
That's a good question. I get, when I thought about football while I was making the presentation, it was more of the catalyst that brought me to Emporia State. It was just like, I was involved in sports, and that's what got me here. But to that point, the job itself is a little isolating, but the community within the factory, you have a whole network of 1,000 people that are like, they may not know what you do or not like directly, interact with you, but when you're walking around the factory or going to different functions, you still have that sense of community there. And also on the, like Sam Alfano's Tips and Tricks or Engravers Cafe, or you have these online communities as well that a lot of people connect that way. So I guess there is kind of that idea, but not directly, maybe. Does that kind of answer that question?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Yes?
Do you actually meet with the client that you're engraving for? Or are there sales personnel that are intermediaries?
We do have an intermediary, and everybody is calling in to customer service. And then the customer service agent would then contact me if there's anything specific or something that they wouldn't be able to answer immediately. Whether it's like, can we do this style? Can we engrave on this coating on the gun? Or can you gold inlay on a certain part of the gun? Something like that, then that's where my communication would come in usually. Yeah. Yes?
So on average, how many guns do you feel like you see like in say a week with like detailing work that you have to do?
I would say that per week, 1. Like on a custom gun, it's going to, even if it's like a Class C might take, 3 or 4 days. A Class B is about a week. And then a Class A or 75% is like a week and a half. It kind of depends on the gun, but it's generally like 1. Yeah. Yes?
How many of the guns do you think are showcase pieces versus things that are being used or or being sold afterwards?
Personally, I hope they're all being used. I hope they are getting ran through at the range. But honestly, I'm not sure. I'd say a lot of them end up being like a showcase piece. Because you are engraving, one of the service that you're providing is like a commemoration of an achievement or a display of wealth or like a story that you can tell your friends, basically. So sometimes I feel like it's less about the gun and more about like the image itself. So a large number of them could be just showcased.
So a follow-up on that. So how many of them do you think are, or how many of the like super customized pieces do you think you're doing a year? The one with names or pictures of pets, like you mentioned earlier?
how many are there? What else?
Like, now, how many like do you think you make in a year?
Oh.
Those specific one.
Not too many, maybe 7 or 8. Some are just like, you know, the patterns, or a larger majority, I would say, are just the classes or just some coverage. Yeah.
So for like ornamentation, like how do you ever have to like go out and invent new ornamentation, or do you like maybe historical,
That's a good question. For some of the like funky areas on a revolver, hard to fit places, I tend to reference Nimshki a lot. The Gala has a great book on, or the Met Gala has a great book of ink pulls from Louis D. Nimshki, and he has a whole bunch of different fun elements and ornamentations that he uses for those areas. So I try to pull inspiration from those and implement them, not, you know, a direct rip, but kind of add my own, you know, flair to that. Yes. And I try to invent some, but while I'm there, it's making something that I haven't ever seen before is scary for this. Yes. That has been a thought. That's also a great question. So one of the declines for like the engraving profession was with like the Industrial Revolution and automation coming in, and like diamond drag, CNC machines, laser stuff, which it's like that is going to take some of it, sure, but I don't think it's ever going to completely take away the whole thing, because people who are looking for hand engraving on their firearm are looking for that specifically. They aren't necessarily looking for something done by a laser or a machine. Like, they want the human experience and that thing that they can take back and tell their friends about. That's just my opinion, but I do feel like I feel pretty strongly about it. Does anybody else have? Mr. Griffiths?
So which is the bigger factor, lack of engravers or lack of collectors?
I'm not sure yet. Right now, I think it's marketing, but I would say, I mean, just judging off some of the forums and the social media outlets, there's a potential that it could be a lack of engravers. Excuse me, a lack of collectors. It seems like there's people out willing who want to do it, or maybe it's just knowing that they're there, or that they're, you know, able to have that service. So honestly, I'm not sure whether it's collectors or engravers, but I feel like it's a lack of knowing that the service exists.
Can I ask one last really dumb question, I guess?
Yes.
I guess I'm curious, thinking about like how machines might take over your job and how people want your hand elements.
Mm-hmm.
I just wondered, like, what is the cost? Like, could somebody from where you grew up afford you? Or is it just like rich people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. There is a certain cost that, you know, comes to these things, but at the same time, you can still get ornamentation on your firearm if that's what you're looking for. It's just how detailed it's going to be. You don't necessarily want to constantly give out discounts to your friends and family, But at the same time, you want to, because you want to do something for them, right? But I think it's possible for engraving to be affordable and still look very nice. You don't necessarily have to be rich in order to get it. Are you looking? No. Okay. Sorry. Anybody else?
Hey, Sam.
Yes.
This is more about creative freedom. Obviously, you do a lot of scroll work, but are you allowed? Are you ever able to move into scenes, Lino, or anything like that at Smith Wesson?
I have the ability to. I actually have a lot of artistic liberty at the job, but it's just based off of what the client would like or what they ask for. I have done one scene, and it was on the side plate. I think it came out well. I should have threw it up on this. But there is the ability to do that. It's just whether it's asked for. Yeah. And so any? Oh, yep.
So, I was wondering, so cost-wise, like how much price does the engraving add to the firearm, like versus a hand engraving?
That's a good question, and it's going to depend on a number of factors. It can add value to the firearm. If you're talking about it coming out of the factory, if it has a factory letter, that's going to be like its pedigree, right? So if we were to go to an auction house or something, that piece of paper is going to increase the value noticeably. And depending on who did it, how intricate it is, if there's any gold, that will also play into like the value of things, or who the gun belonged to as well. So like Teddy Roosevelt had a Smith Wesson engraved gun, and that went on auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a lot. But say you were to get a 44 Magnum here with a shorter barrel, get a Class C, it may add, like, with the factory letter, $1,500 to $2,000, depending on a few factors and how lucky you get at the auction house. But it definitely does add value. Just the number, there's some variables, so it's hard to pin down.
Any other questions? Great. So I'll give Sam a round of applause.
To support the ESU Art Forum program, please visit emporia.edu/art. Click on the Events tab, scroll down to the Art Forum link and click. Then scroll down to the Support Art Forum button and click. Finally, choose your donation level and click on the Continue button to complete the process. We appreciate your support.